Hello y'all, and welcome back to my channel. We're going to get straight into it. This is going to be a quick tutorial on how I draw my support and resistance beams using the TradingView platform. I have an entire TradingView walkthrough tutorial on my channel, so if you haven't checked that out, go ahead and check that out. But if you just want to learn how to draw support and resistance beams, then keep on watching. All right, y'all, so this is TradingView. This is what I used for all of my charting. I've been using it since I started trading back in 2020. And right now I am on the Meta chart. So I wanted to pick one that I haven't marked up recently and looked at it recently. Meta definitely fits that. Meta has been doing some things. I knew we had a gap up because of earnings, but I didn't know that we were still above the gap and this gap still hasn't been filled. So I've been hearing some things in the news about Meta. Yeah, I can definitely see why people are interested in the stock. Yeah, so right now I'm on the 4-hour candle, and how I like to start off is zoom out. So I'm going to go to the daily candle. This is the daily candle. It shows way too much. I could see back here in 2014, 2015. I really don't need to mark anything beyond that. Once there has been some up and down action, that is where I really pay attention. And the first thing I want to do is start off with my, what I like to call it, an all-time high beam and an all-time low beam. So I go over here to, right now it's on brush, but it's the geometric shapes icon on the sidebar. And I'm going to go to rectangle, and I have this favorited. And then I can click on here and start adding my rectangle. Now, this is what I use to draw my support resistance beam. Some people do lines. I like to do boxes. And as we get further in this video, you guys will see why I like to do boxes. So just put a box on there and have it pretty wide. Now we're going to place it properly. So I'm going to start with the low beam and hit where we have some lows. I'm not going to go all the way back here in 2013. And this is a good point. Why this is a good point, and the reason why I like to do beams / rectangles, I'll be using those interchangeably throughout this tutorial. Beams and rectangles is the same thing. If you're having issues with being able to move your chart around, you go down here and take it off auto. So that way you can move it around freely. And that's going to be good when you're marking up your charts, but when you're actually trading, it's better to have it on auto so it doesn't distort the candle shapes. I am zooming in here to show you guys why I like to use rectangles. And the reason why is because, as you can see, we have a top part of the rectangle and a bottom part of the rectangle. Price hits areas, not specific prices. Sometimes it'll hit right on the penny, but a lot of times it's a specific area. So maybe like a $1 to $2 range that it's hitting and bouncing off of or getting resisted at. And so that's why I like to use a rectangle, because it ends up hitting that range, and that determines how wide I'm going to make my rectangle. So as we can see here, I'm going to go back to the geometric and click on the brush tool so I can draw this. We have some bottom resistance, but then we also have some top resistance, and this one rectangle hits both of them. So the top of my rectangle is hitting the top support. Sorry, I said resistance, but I meant support. So the top part is hitting some support, and the bottom part is hitting some support. Move this around some more, way back here to 2016, and we can see that again the bottom of the rectangle is acting as support for a lot of candles, and then the top of the rectangle is acting as support for a lot of candles. So it's hitting that range properly, which is why I like to use rectangles instead of lines when I'm doing support and resistance. So this is a good width. So I'm going to put it back on auto so I can get a better view of how it's looking. All right, so that's how it looks. That's going to be my all-time low beam. Now I'm going to take this, right click it, and click clone so I can get the same shape and length. And then I'm going to put it to the all-time high part of the chart. This is the all-time high. This is the highest that we've been. We recently hit this month, March 7th, 2024. I'm zooming in here to see exactly where it's hitting. And again, we have it hitting in a nice range. So this all-time high beam is going to be acting as resistance, where the all-time low is more so of support. So I'm looking to make sure that we're hitting resistance. So I'm looking at the all-time high beam. So we have it being resisted here at the top of the rectangle, and then we also have some resistance here at the bottom of the rectangle. So this is a good width and a good shape for me. So I'm going to keep that width in shape. And now, before I change the colors on these, because I do like to change the colors on my all-time high and my all-time low, Before I play with the colors, I'm going to clone this one more time. Clone this one more time so I can have this nice gray color for my middle beams. And I'm not gonna put this on the chart yet. Before I really determine where this needs to go, I'm gonna change the color of the all-time high and the all-time low. You could change the color if you want. I like to do it because when you are actually trading and you're zoomed in, and sometimes we're in here on the 10-minute, 5-minute candle, you're not going to be seeing the all-time high and all-time low beams when you're zoomed in unless you're right at that price point. So I'm not getting confused with all the other rectangles on my chart. I like to go ahead and color code my all-time high and all-time low so that when I am zoomed in, I can say, oh my goodness, okay, I'm hitting this purple beam. That means we're getting to all-time highs, which is all-time resistance. Can we break this point? Things like that. And then opposite end for the all-time low beam. If I'm zoomed in and I haven't really been paying attention because I haven't been zoomed out on the daily, and I see, oh, we're hitting a red beam, that's my all-time low beam, we're getting to a point of major resistance. Maybe I need to start getting into some stock shares right now. Different things can be going through your mind when you hit those levels. I like to do my all-time low beam red. So I'm going to change the outline and the inside. So I like to do that red. And then the top, I like to do a purple. Don't ask me why. I really don't know. Ever since I started charting, that's just what I choose. I think I choose these two colors because I don't use these colors for trend lines and I don't use these colors for arrows. So these are colors that are outside of a color that I'll use for anything else. When I'm zoomed in here, let me just go to the 10-minute for reference, and I'm trading, every day I'm trading, I'm doing my thing. I'll know that I'm at an all-time point. I'm at a really significant point in this price history when I see that the color of the beam is a different color. So that's why I like to make those really important beams a different color. Now let's go to the center beams. So this was the daily that we were just on, so I could get a really zoomed out view. I can still use the daily to add just a couple more middle ones, like some major ones. And I mean, as we can see right here, I just eyeballed that, but some of you may want to put it here. You don't want to put it here. You don't put it in a gap. You put it where it's gotten resisted or supported at. There's nothing here. There's no resistance or support here. So there would be no beam right here. You want to put it where it's been resisted or supported at. And this is again where I like to use a beam so I can draw and drag this to where it's hitting perfectly for me. Right here. Resistance at the bottom of the beam. Resistance at the top of the beam until we broke out, and then I'll put another one right here for support. So that is why I just placed that there. Now I'm going to clone this to have the same length and the same color and all of that, and I'm going to add another one on here. This is looking good for me. I've gotten to the point where I can kind of eyeball this, but I'm going to try to explain my thought process. But this has as many touch points as you could possibly get with this area. This is a pretty tricky area. We have some gaps. We have a lot of just messiness here. But this right here, and actually if I could just, drag that down just a little bit more. This hits more touch points than any other place of me moving that around. And what I mean by touch points, got to zoom in to see the touch points. Got a touch point here, support, resistance. Support and resistance beams go both ways all the time. Flipped into support. So the top of the beam is acting as support here. Here it's just really, really choppy. But then we also have this little back test here. It came back and tested it as support. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 significant touch points. Oh, missed one. Right here. Resistance. A little up, resistance down, and then breakthrough. 6 significant touch points right on the top of the line and the bottom of the line. So this is a good place to put this support resistance beam. Okay, let's see. Let me see if I can add one more. So I'm going to clone this, and I will definitely need to change this to be skinnier. I can already tell. And see if I can add one here without it being too messy and too cluttered. All right, I like this. I like this point here. What I'm looking at, you can drag until your eyeballs can like spot the touch points and then verify with the brush tool. Actually, when I'm zooming in here, I'm not liking this. Not liking how this is looking. This is a little bit better. It's a little bit better, but let me see how it looks over here. I might need to make this a little bit thicker. Okay, this is okay. What I'm looking at here is resistance. Kind of broke through, but that's okay. Anything within the beam, and that's a strategy of mine. I never trade within a beam. If we're within a beam, we got to figure out what we're doing before I start trading. I never trade within a beam. So I love making my beam, you know, pretty transparent in the middle so I can see what's going on still. I like for price to decide if we're going to break through and come back and back test, or if we're going to get resisted. So never trade within a beam. Support here. We have support here. If this was thicker, which is, I'm not going to drag it up anymore, but if it was thicker, if it was thicker, it would touch this too. If I drag this up, it would touch this, it would touch this, it would touch this. It's tempting, but I'm not going to do that. I don't want this beam to be super thick. I don't like having too many thick beams on my chart. Zoom in over here. We have all this perfect. Now this is a to the penny type of thing. We were consistently getting supported at 154.22. So all that's good. And then we had resistance right here until the next day we gapped up, and then resistance right here. All right, so that's pretty much it. Well, okay, I'm gonna add one more to support this gap right here. Just one more. I'm gonna clone the skinny one. Take it. There we go. Now I don't know how thick to make this because I don't have any other price action to go off of. We gapped up here and we haven't back tested this area since, so I don't know how thick to make this, so I'm going to make it super thin and thicken it later when we get some more price action here. So that's all that I did on the daily, and I did a lot with the daily candle. Now I can zoom in to the 4 hour and see if we can get some smaller ones, and the more I zoom in, the skinnier my beams get, because again, it can get really cluttered really quickly. So you don't want that. So I'm going to go ahead and clone this skinny one. I can always thicken it and see if I can put something here. There's a lot of price action movement in this price range. So I'm seeing this. It's looking a little messy though. Let me see. Let me see if you're able to eyeball where you have a lot of touch points or pivot points. That may be a better way to explain it. Okay, this is not perfect, but it's good enough for the area. Here we have resistance, resistance, support. Support at the bottom of the beam. All this is pretty much support, but it's very choppy, so I'm not going to count it. Support right here, resistance at the top of the beam, resistance at the top of the beam, resistance at the top of the beam, support at the bottom. That's a lot of pivot points for this one beam, so that's good. So I'm going to clone this, and I'm going to do just one more in between here if I can. If it's too messy, then I'm going to delete it. Just let me see. Okay, I like this. I like this. It's a little messy, but I like this. And the reason why I like this is because resistance, resistance, resistance. Finally broke out, came back and back tested it as support. This wick, gotta zoom in for that. This wick came and back tested it as support. Over here gets a little messy, but we have resistance. All this within could be resistance technically, came back tested it as support. So that is definitely good enough for me. All of my beams are usually pretty much drawn on the daily candle and the 1 hour candle. I don't tend to go more in than that. Otherwise, it's going to get too cluttered. So as you can see, I can still see my support resistance beams when we're on the hourly candle. I can still see them when we are on the 15-minute candle. Now, if you are a scalper, you may want to come in here in this 10-minute and draw some lines. But that's a whole nother thing. I personally don't do that. This is how I do my support resistance beams. I do them at major pivot areas. And then for lines, I like to do trend lines. So if you're going to be putting on a trend line tutorial, make sure you watch that. And I will see you guys in my next video. Bye.